every block that Bitcoin continues to exist, it proves that money can exist without inflation, and it proves that money can exist without government. But I think that if you want to escape all that political stupid money, just buy Bitcoin and put it in self-custody. What it was in the past was a lot of this kind of retail driven buying. And that means that people would go on exchanges and they would just buy spot Bitcoin, and that would make the price go up. What you're seeing now is institutional or smart money buying, meaning they're buying in such ways where they don't want the price to go up because they're buying billions of dollars at the same time. Bitcoin fixes this, and it's going to be a bumpy road. Like, the separation of money and state ain't going to be easy, bro. It's going to be bumpy. I think everything compared to Bitcoin is going to zero, and it's just a question of at what rate it will go to zero. They say cash is freedom, and they have cash under their mattress, and it makes sense, but simultaneously it's like, is it really freedom though? Because that cash under your mattress is losing value. Dude, listen, fundamentally you're right, but you're still using the wrong tool, dude. So those people are Bitcoiners, they just don't know it yet.
Hi Nico, how are you doing? Thanks again for being on.
Yo, what's up, dude? Thank you so much for having me, bro. I appreciate it. Love being on your show, and I love your accent too. I'm from Austria. I love it. But thanks for the invite, man. Big fan of your content. You've been crushing it. You work so hard, dude. 6 days a week, you're just pumping out podcast interview after interview. It just kind of reminds me of the early days of Simply. So it's really an honor to be on the show.
Oh man, I would love to have the trajectory of Simply. You're doing an amazing job. We just talked about it beforehand, that you're on the way of hitting 100K. This comes out a little later, so maybe you're already there once this gets out. Let's see. But for the few, 5 people in the audience that might not know you, are still unfamiliar with who you are and who's Simply Bitcoin. Who are you, and why are you excited about Bitcoin?
Yeah, I'm just a Bitcoin content creator, and I always dreamed of being a YouTuber, and I love Bitcoin, so I figured I would start making content about Bitcoin on YouTube. And when I started, it was 2020, so there was very little Bitcoin only content. It's not like now where there's 20 podcasts, 20 or 30 different content creators, and I'm sure there's going to be more and more. But when I started, there was very, very few. I just started. I had a dream, and I just kept working, and just like you're working every single day. And, that starts to compound. You might not see the effects on a daily basis, but if you start doing something every day for extended periods of time, there's compounding effects. And just extremely grateful and blessed to be here. It's
a really good thing. I mean, it has not that much to do with Bitcoin, maybe a little bit, but if you're in the daily action and you're doing it every day, you kind of miss how fast you're growing and how fast things are actually going up. Even in Bitcoin, if you just look at if you look at the Bitcoin price chart every day, you're kind of thinking Bitcoin is flat for like the last 15 years because you're always looking at it and the reference is not going up. But if you look and zoom out of like, oh, how far we've come the last 1 year, the last 2 years, and last 5 years. I mean, 5 years ago, Bitcoin was at a low of, 3K, 5K. Now people are saying, oh, we are crashing down to 99K. And so it's kind of funny where you are. And the same is true if you're doing any kind of entrepreneurial thing, content creation thing, you're in a daily business. And then when you look back, oh, how far I've actually come 2 years back. It's like, oh shit, like things are actually accumulating and things are actually way better than 2 years ago. So that's been great.
Yeah, man. It's I think that's kind of I would say one of the most difficult parts, just because of the human experience. You live in the present, so you live in the day to day. So it's kind of difficult to realize what has happened. Like 2 years ago, I think the price of Bitcoin was at like 17K, right? 2 years ago, I think, the amount of subscribers we had, I think, was like under 40,000 maybe. So, I think like things compound, and then they just compound greater and greater over time. And yeah, it's important to kind of zoom out. It's human nature to just be like, dude, like, why doesn't the price do something? But if you kind of zoom out, you'll start to see it, and you'll find serenity in that, that everything's going to work out. And also another thing that I'll say too is like, don't be afraid and have faith. I think a lot of the fight that people have with themselves when it comes to hodling or when it comes to content creation itself is like this story that they tell themselves in their mind, but it's not really real. Like if you just keep going, and you just don't stop believing, the yellow meme, and you just stay focused and you just outwork everyone. I can't emphasize that enough. You really have to outwork everybody. You have a very high probability of succeeding in the long term.
It's interesting because I've seen, like, I'm not even long in the game. I'm doing the podcast now for a year and I don't know, 3-4 months. I've already seen at least 4 podcasts that I could think out of my head that started and stopped within the period that I'm doing the podcast. So like most people stop. But it's interesting when you think about Bitcoin, and you have been last on the show, I think around 11 months ago, so about a year. If I remember correctly, it was around 50 to 60K. Trump was not in office. Like hundreds of Bitcoin companies came out of that, no matter treasury companies, but also companies that build into Bitcoin. Let's take the time of like kind of rewinding what kind of happened. And you have the news show, you probably have like 1,000 things that happened the last 1 year. What kind of stood out for you the last couple of months, couple of the 1 year?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think Bitcoin's maturing, and I think that's something that a lot of us Bitcoiners have to internalize. Like, the buying that's happening right now is not what it was in the past. What it was in the past was a lot of this kind of retail driven buying. And that means that people would go on exchanges and they would just buy spot Bitcoin, and that would make the price go up. What you're seeing now is institutional or smart money buying, meaning they're buying in such ways where they don't want the price to go up because they're buying billions of dollars at the same time. So, a 20% price increase is extremely expensive for them. So they're buying OTC, they're buying in a way where people don't even realize what they're buying, right? Like Michael Saylor briefly has described some of the ways that he's bought Bitcoin, where he was just like, yeah, I just bought a little bit, every single day, a little bit relative to him, right? In a way where people just wouldn't notice. And that's what I think, Bitcoiners have to understand, is that Bitcoin is a mature asset, or it's becoming a mature asset. It's becoming mainstream. It's not really bunk or underground anymore. And it's being embraced by TradFi and Wall Street, and they're embracing it with open arms, and they're saying, hey guys, come here, we'll be your friend, we'll accept you. And I think that to Bitcoiners it catches a lot of them off guard, man. But that's what I'm seeing, right? Now that doesn't mean that we still can't have an amazing end of the year where, we hit 150 or 200,000, right? But I was around in 2017 where we went from $1,000 in January to $20,000 in December. That's a 20x, right? Now we're just kind of like, hey, can I have a 2x? That would be great. That would be wonderful. So it is a very large asset. And there are different differences of opinion on this. Like Adam Back, Bitcoin OG, he's talking about an S curve. He's saying like, look, man, we're gonna hit an S curve and we're gonna have these crazy parabolas, and the diminishing return theory is gonna go out the window. But I just don't see it. Like I see this kind of amazing return. If you look at the Michael Saylor presentation, it was like, I think it started at 50% CAGR, and then it starts to go down over like a decade or so, and then it like kind of stabilizes around that 20 to 21% number, which is like fantastic, absolutely incredible. Like that beats everything. But that kind of has to change your mindset a little bit. Like it's the days of like, just 10x in a year might be over. And that's something that Bitcoiners, I think, have to internalize.
It's super interesting because I think 2 or 3 episodes ago, I talked with Giovanni from the Power Law. I just came back from Bitcoin Prague, where Michael Saylor gave the presentation of 21 million in 21 years, which is, I think, a 28 point something, 29 CAGR. And then in 21 years, Bitcoin will grow at 21%. Really interesting how he put it together, that he got the 21 years, the 21 so many times in there. And we have this gradually, and suddenly that S curve, so many different kind of models of trying to make sense of something we maybe cannot make sense because it's digital scarcity, and we basically don't even have something to compare it really to. But that's been really interesting. The one thing that I'm always wondering about with those models is, what if we have more inflation? It seems like the US dollar is not past 50 years lost. I don't know, like 90, 95, whatever the number is of purchasing power next 20 years. I'm not sure how good the US dollar even will keep up. The other currencies, of course, like even worse than that. How do you look at those models, and then also calculating and factoring in just the inflation and the M2 money supply that's kind of growing in that?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question. So let's break it down a little bit, right? So, I mean, the Lynn Alden meme of "Nothing Stops This Train." Larry Lepard wrote a book called The Big Print, which I'm sure you've talked to him about. James Lavish, continues to talk about the debt spiral, and even Jerome Powell, like the chairman of the Federal Reserve in the United States, talks about how the United States is on an unsustainable fiscal trajectory. So, I mean, like, they're going to have to print money. The U.S. government spends roughly, I think it's like $2 trillion more every single year than it collects in tax revenue. And that is the only way they're able to fund that is through money printing or currency debasement. So, and that's just going to balloon. That's not going to stop. I mean, you saw Elon go in there with Doge, and this is one of the smartest men. I know a lot of Bitcoiners don't like Elon, but like, let's just be real. Like, this is one of the smartest men in the world, wealthiest men in the world. Invented, basically the electric car, self-driving car, self-landing rockets. He's a hell of an entrepreneur, and he goes in there, and I think he's able to make $150 billion of cuts. Then he starts to get demoralized because Republicans, like the party that he got into power, that he put hundreds of millions of dollars getting elected, aren't supporting his tax cuts, his cuts in the first place. And that's when I came to the realization. In fact, I was saying it for about 6 months or so, Robin. I was saying like Elon is going to have a very bad experience, because you have to understand that whether you're a Democrat or Republican, so the left and the right in the United States, right? There's only two parties. There's a two-party system in the U.S. they both benefit from this printer, right? So their voters have been accustomed to the benefits of the printer, even though it's hurting them. They don't realize it, right? Like they don't realize that, college ain't free or welfare ain't free. You're paying for it. But it's kind of like this like insidious tax where like people don't realize they're paying for it because it's currency debasement. So to kind of like weave it back in, like, yeah, I mean, I think all fiat currencies are going to zero. I think everything compared to Bitcoin is going to zero. And it's just a question of at what rate it will go to zero. Now, out of the basket of all fiat currencies, I think the US dollar is one of the strongest. The Swiss is a strong one as well. But again, that doesn't mean they're strong. It means they're terrible. They're horrific. But if you are in Argentina or Venezuela and you're dealing with double-digit inflation, you look at the dollar and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And that's why stablecoins are so popular, by the way. And that's why they were so happy to pass the so-called Genius Act, the Stablecoin Act in the United States. The reason they were so happy to pass this is because it essentially allows the fiat games to continue. Because essentially, like for anyone who's not familiar with how this works, the Treasury issues these bonds to the open market. And what is supposed to happen is you have sovereign wealth funds, you have countries buying these bonds. But what tends to happen is no one has the money or the confidence to buy these bonds. So what ends up happening is that the Federal Reserve buys the bonds themselves, and that is the money printing mechanism, right? So like it like on paper it's kosher. Like what they're doing is kosher. But if you break it down, you're like, the Fed's just buying the bonds from the Treasury themselves. It's like the left pocket is putting in the right pocket. Like they're buying it from themselves, right? And then that's how they justify like printing more money. So yeah, I mean, long story short, I think the US dollar is going to continue to do well in the grand scheme of things because of the proliferation of stable coins. I think the inflation rate is never going to go back to 2% as much as they want it to be. I think we're being lied to about the actual inflation rate. They keep changing the CPI numbers. So like they'll change the adjustments so that it makes them look good. But I don't think it's 3%. I don't think it's 2%. Like that's a lie. Just look at the price of real estate. Like I live in South Florida. Real estate doubled in like 6 months to a year because of all the money printing that happened during the pandemic, right? Is it because the housing prices doubled? No, housing prices didn't double. It was inflation. You saw inflation through the housing market, but you didn't see inflation through consumer goods, but you saw inflation through the housing market. You saw inflation through equities. You saw inflation through hard assets. That's where the inflation happened. It didn't happen in consumer goods. Maybe it didn't happen in food as much. It happened in energy, but it happened. Like the money printing caused inflation, right? And I think our job as Bitcoiners is to kind of really wake people up to this reality where if you switch to a Bitcoin standard, you're not experiencing that type of inflation. In fact, you're already living in a deflationary world, which is the way that the free market should actually operate. And I know, Robin, you've talked to Jeff Booth. Like he makes this case extremely well, right? Where he's basically saying the natural order of the free market is deflationary, and that's how we should be seeing things. And the only thing that you will be able to see this deflationary market happening as if you're saving in Bitcoin and you're earning in Bitcoin. Because if you're saving and earning in Bitcoin, everything around you will get cheaper. But I think that's the natural order of things. So I don't know if that was a very long-ended answer to your question. But yeah, man, I think the CPI numbers are BS. I think the US dollar is going to stay around for a while. But I think that if you want to escape all that political stupid money, just buy Bitcoin and put it in self-custody.
I also love the one tweet of Donald Trump and Elizabeth Warren, where they both basically said the literally only thing that we agree on is that we have to get rid of the debt ceiling. Basically, the only thing that red and blue is agreeing on, hey, let's print more money. That's the only thing that you're like, let's do that. That seems to be good. No matter what you vote on, that's the thing that they both want to do. And I think that's maybe Elon Musk wanted to change that, and he ran against the wall maybe there.
Yeah, I agree. You know, again, like it's a little bit of a disappointment that, you know, he had to experience the pushback that he did. You know, but again, it exposed the system itself. And it's hilarious that like our politicians at this point are just like, you know what, like we like printing money, you know, fugazi, you know, like it's printing money for everyone. You want print money. But I mean, that is like the natural evolution of this system, because the system is if you're a politician and you have the godlike power, because that's what it is, of being able to create money for free that everyone else has to work for, and you use that power to fund a war, buy votes, promise people hope. Like, think about it. Like, politicians go up and remember when the pandemic happened? Like I remember like when Trump was in office, he sent everyone a stimulus check. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's nuts. You know, no one talks about like the inflationary pressures of that, but like, you know, we're at the point in the movie where like the government is basically saying, all right, everybody, here's free money. You know, here's $1,600. It's funny too, because if you put that money into Bitcoin, like today it would be worth like 14,000, which is crazy. So yeah, man, I mean, look, nothing stops this train. They're going to keep doing it. And you know, get on a lifeboat, get on a lifeboat, get on Bitcoin.
One thing that you mentioned, which was interesting, was the stable coins. It's for me almost like a Blu-ray of the Blu-ray moment of fiat money, where you improve the technology, but you really don't fix any problems. And then there's this digital thing coming, which is digital music, digital movies, in that comparison, Bitcoin, which is just like far superior than any CD or Blu-ray or whatever you want to call it. Do you see that stable coin kind of the final life, or the last straw that fiat has to cling on to the power for, I don't know, a few more decades?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I think they're using stable coins as a way to kind of extend the you know, the fiat system. So like, what do I mean by that? So like there right now, stable coins are, this is a reality that a lot of Bitcoiners don't understand and don't appreciate, but as Bitcoiners, we should be free market maximalists. So that means that we should like take signals from the free market, not from our feelings. The free market is telling me that there is mass scale stablecoin adoption in the developing world. It is viral, right? Like, people are adopting Tether, like the likes of which has never been seen before. Like, the adoption rate is crazy. So what happens if you are a US politician? All of a sudden you see stablecoins as a way to propagate the US dollar worldwide. And that includes circumventing local national currencies. So if you're in Argentina and, you know, you have a choice between a US dollar in the digital form, which is Tether or USDC, or the local currency, the peso or whatever, what are you going to choose? You're going to choose the dollar, right? So as more and more in the world, as more and more of the world chooses the dollar, that actually makes the dollar stronger, and it allows them to propagate the scam. It allows them to continue this, oh, we can just print into forever. And a little known fact too is that Tether, and I'm actually a big fan of the Tether guys because they're actually Bitcoiners. And they actually even admit this too. So it's kind of funny. But they're one of the biggest treasury buyers in the world. I mean, remember how I was saying earlier, like no one wants to buy the treasuries and it's the Fed that ends up buying the treasuries? Well, Tether is one of the biggest buyers in the first place, right? I think they're in the top 10. It's absolutely crazy. It's absurd, right? So I think though, fundamentally at the end, what I think is going to happen is that it's going to function as a Trojan horse to Bitcoin. And the reason I say that is because it gives people exposure to like digital dollars, digital wallets, better said. And once people are on dollars, then they'll start to see the inflation rate on dollars too, right? Like once their economies fully dollarize, they're going to start feeling inflation just like we do in the West, right? On other currencies. The difference is that they're going from, let's say, the Bolivar or the peso that is horrific. It's terrible. It's double-digit inflation to the dollar. So for them, it's like, oh my God, like I found like this thing is gold. This thing is amazing. This thing is fantastic. Like I found the answer to money. But as let's say 50, 60% of the population adopts, the digital dollar, the Tether, they're going to realize the scam too. And they're going to be like, oh, you know what? This Bitcoin thing looks a little bit better than this digital dollar, right? So yeah, I think it's a Trojan horse. I think it's extending kind of like the life of the fiat system. And then you have the other alternative, which is where Europe is going down this path of the central bank digital currency, which is, I think, it's just not working already, right? But it's not stopping them. They still think that somehow they're going to be able to convince people to use it or force people to use it. Robin, I was actually like seeing news the other day where like people are getting like, it went viral, but basically some guy went to a bank and was like, hey, I need 2,500 pounds to buy a motorbike for my kid. And the bank was like, no, like you need to explain to me like why. And then like, I'm like, just like thinking about that for a second. I'm like, isn't that his money? Like, why are they asking him what he should do with his money? So they're like in the process of demonizing cash. And the reason that they're trying to do this is because, and then I think in Canada too, it's now illegal for you to make a $10,000 cash transaction, right? And the reason they're doing that is because they want everyone on this kind of digital system of which they can control. And that digital system inevitably becomes the CBDC, which is linked to your digital ID. And then they can continue this kind of wealth extraction through currency debasement. And that's why they hate Bitcoin. Like fundamentally, like if you want to know why they really dislike Bitcoin, and to use Christine Lagarde's own words, is because it provides an escape valve and it provides a mirror, right? Like every block that Bitcoin continues to exist, it proves that money can exist without inflation, and it proves that money can exist without government, right? And that scares the living daylights out of them. Like they can't handle that. Like they're like, no. If people find out about this, like we're screwed because this is how they make money. This is how they fund themselves. This is their source of power, right? So anyways, that's my take.
That's super interesting. And I actually looked it up once. In Austria, you can still pay up until 10K in euro in cash. But the one detail is if you do it above 3,000 euros, the merchant or the guy that sells you the stuff and that you give them the money to has to KYC you starting from 3,000 euros. So basically you have to go through a KYC process with the merchant just to buy something because it's cash and it's above 3,000 euros, which is ridiculous. Because it's like just money. Like what's the difference between 3,000 and 4,000? And it's super interesting when we think about also the thing that you said with US dollar and with exchanging it. If there's only the US dollar, what are we changing? Because I see now people like Argentine peso, like the Turkish lira. And when you see the people, like, what are they doing? They are mostly switching to the USDD. They're usually trying to get a better fiat currency. When you talk with people from Egypt, they're like, oh, I want to have the euro. I want to have the US dollar, because their own local currency is so bad. So they have to have, they have kind of a safe haven in a better fiat currency. But what if the best fiat currency is the only fiat currency and it's also having double-digit inflation, and then you have that stable coin US dollar and in a digital wallet, and then you also have in the same wallet the possibility of holding Bitcoin, of holding something actually that is digital scarce. You're like, oh, this Bitcoin thing is going up and this US dollar thing is going down. So I like the perspective of stable coins, and even even digital currencies in general maybe being a Trojan horse for Bitcoin, because it gets people used to digital money, which in general is bad, except if it's Bitcoin. So it could turn out to be really good for Bitcoin. And with cash, it's interesting because I have a lot of people, like some people in the comments that say, oh, like Bitcoin is digital. It's the same thing as CBDCs, which, obviously then you haven't understood what Bitcoin really is. But they are always going to like, oh, cash is the real liberty. That's freedom. To some extent, yes, but it's still like deflating away. But I think if you fight for cash, it's an uphill battle. I really don't think we can save cash, because if you see the trending numbers, even what consumers prefer, like if you just think about from first principles, do you really want to get the coins out and the bills, and like you're losing it, they're laying around your house, or just like with your phone double tap and you have an Apple thing going on. The same with Bitcoin. It's like very easy to pay, like Lightning wallet. It's just like scan it, press it, it's done. It's super easy and nice. People will get rid of cash. Like I think it's just a matter of time. Even if you don't want it, and I don't want it, but even if you don't want it, cash will just like, we will not have cash probably like, and I don't know, in 20 years or something like that. Maybe sooner, probably sooner. How do you think about that uphill battle in cash? And do you agree that it will just go away?
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna go away. I think they're gonna get more and more. They're gonna try to, I'm really glad that you brought this up. So the Bank Secrecy Act passed in, I think it was like 1970, right? 1971. I might be correct there. Secrecy Act.
Yeah, 1970.
Yeah, 1970. Okay. So when that act passed, it essentially made it so that every $10,000 transaction had to be reported to the government. So if you were making a transaction of $10,000 or more, you had to report it. The bank itself had to report it to the US government. Now, what's really interesting about that is that if you adjust for inflation, that $10,000 is worth $80,000 in 1970. 80,000, right? So you're at the time, think about it. You're like, 80,000, like that sounds reasonable. Like it's nothing. So, but they never changed it. They never changed that effing number, right? So now it's down to 10,000, which is not the same as 10,000 in 1970. And then during this never ended up getting passed, but they tried. During the so-called Inflation Reduction Act during the Biden administration, they tried to put in a provision where every $600 transaction had to be reported. Mind you, these are the same people that were losing their minds when Elon Musk was going in there and basically saying, hey, what's all this stuff happening with, this USAID stuff? This makes no sense. Like, we're paying Social Security to someone who's 300 years old. Like, what the F? And they're forming riots and they were freaking out. They were going insane. They were losing their minds. And I was like, remember thinking, I was like, okay, so wait a second. The government can audit you, but when you want to audit the government, that doesn't work, right? And then if you look at the Pentagon has failed every audit for the last 7 years. And you're talking about trillions of dollars. Like it's the magnitude is so large and the double standard. So citizens are supposed to comply, are supposed to go along with it. But the government that is supposed to be representing the people, they operate by a different set of rules. That isn't a republic. That isn't a democracy. That is tyranny. That's what it is. And this tyranny is enabled by the money printer. Because as long as the money printer exists, Robin, politicians or the state don't feel like they're accountable to their constituents because their source of power comes from their ability to print. Under a sound money standard, their source of power only comes from their ability to generate tax revenue. I'm telling you, if they raise tax revenue too high under a sound money standard, there will be a revolution tomorrow. People won't accept it. They'll say, this is crazy. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not paying 70% of my stuff while you're misallocating it. But the reason they get away with it is because they have the ability to print money, right? So, yeah, man, I mean, it's crazy, this like kind of war on cash. It's inevitable. Robin, every single time I talk to Jeff, like, he blows my mind. And basically the argument he makes is we live in this coercive system that is required to be coercive because it's based on theft. Like, monetary debasement is based on theft. And because it's a coercive system, in order for it to continue to survive, it needs to be more and more and more and more coercive. That is the natural evolution of it. And we, as a species, as humanity, we have a fork in the road. And we get to decide, do we want to continue going down this system of theft? Or do we want to continue going down a system of decentralization, optimism, peace, prosperity, on a sound money system? Those are the two roads ahead of us. There is no in-between road. And this is what you were talking about with your frustration with the cash thing. You're like, you know what? I see the people, they have a point with cash. Like, they say cash is freedom and they have cash under their mattress and, it makes sense. But simultaneously, it's like, is it really freedom though? Because that cash under your mattress is losing value, right? But in their eyes, it is freedom because they can go to the store. It doesn't have to be reported. They can spend it freely. They don't have to it can't be declined. So it's our job as Bitcoiners to really wake them up. And it's like, dude, listen, fundamentally, like, you're right, but you're still using the wrong tool, dude. Right? So those people are Bitcoiners. They just don't know it yet.
The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from CoinVigilante represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey, and the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They're also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. 100%. It's also interesting. I don't know if you have an opinion on that because it has not that much to do with Bitcoin, I think. But you definitely have seen the outrage between Elon and Trump. And I was always thinking either Elon just decided on, oh shit, it actually hurts my business in being in the government too long because people think I'm a politician, an unelected politician kind of, or Elon kind of found something that he shouldn't find. I could see both sides. What do you think happened there with Elon and Trump? It's been a while since it's actually happened. I think it's already some weeks behind us, but it's interesting to look back at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good point. So I think, fundamentally what has happened is that Elon stirred up the hornet's nest. I think he found some skeletons in the closet, and I think it, he pissed a lot of people off, and I think that's what you're seeing right now. I think that's the case with Elon. Also, too, for the type of federal employee that he could be. He had there was a time limit, right? So like he could only be in that office for a certain amount of time before he would be considered kind of like a full federal employee. So like the media likes to spin it where like, it's like, oh, Elon was forced out in a way. And at the end, it didn't seem like it was like and it's funny too, because also like a lot of people don't understand that like, these are two like alpha men, like, and the way that like alpha men communicate sometimes is like, they throw, they throw stuff at each other. And that's what happened at the end. Like Elon was like, hey, Trump, like, you're like, you were on the list. And then, Trump's like, Elon is an idiot. And, but at the end they were like, oh, we're friends. Right. But yeah, I mean, Elon got in there, stirred the hornet's nest. He approached it from an entrepreneurial perspective. So he approached it from someone who's used to going into a company, optimizing it, and making it work better. Government does not work like that. It is a bureaucracy of a bureaucracy. Like if you've ever worked at a large company, you know what I'm talking about. Like it's like there's middle management. You have to get it has to get approved. You have to deal with this. You have to do, and there's a lot of bureaucracy. Government is that times 100, and the reason for that is because there is no feedback mechanism. So like if you as a business start making bad decisions consistently over a period of time, by definition you will go out of business, right? The government, no, they won't go out of business, right? Like they can just print. So Like what that creates is this enormous bureaucracy, and that bureaucracy is what fundamentally attacked Elon. It's what is attacking Trump, and is what it is what will attack anything and anyone that tries to make it smaller or tries to take its power or money away. Some people call it the administrative state. Some people call it the deep state. I don't think it's some type of conspiracy. The way that people just have to look at it is there are government employees that remain employed regardless of who's elected into office. And those government employees have no accountability. There is no democratic accountability towards those employees. That is a tremendous amount of power. And that, I think, is what we're dealing with all over the West, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. In Europe, it's Brussels. Like, holy cow. You know, they're like making rules left, and this Ursula lady's like, you know, making rules left and right. And, you know, they're canceling elections and stuff. Like what happened in Romania was nuts, bro. Like they had an election and then they were just like the wrong party won. And they're like, eh. And then like what happened in France, like that was nuts, bro. Like Le Pen, like getting like, you know, like she's getting convicted because her party like almost won. And then like it's wild. And then there's like the German party. I forget what the name. It's like RFK or something, RFKD or something like that. And then they're getting criminalized. And then it's like simultaneously you're getting like talked about like, oh, we love democracy. It's like, no, you don't. You don't love democracy. You love democracy if it goes a certain way. You don't love democracy if it goes another way. So essentially what's happening is, you know, these giant bureaucracies are fighting for survival because they've grown so big that they've started to become parasitic in nature. Like they're starting to put so much pressure on people that they have to censor, they have to raise taxes, they have to do the CBDCs, they have to, because in order for them to continue to survive, they have to continue extracting more and more and more resources. And because they don't have justifications for that extraction, they would just censor you instead. And they call you an alt-right extremist and they call you a racist. It's so much easier to do that, right? Than to actually explain why they're doing what they're doing, right? But I think I think that long term it's unviable. I think it's an unsustainable solution. And eventually all these things are just going to collapse under their own weight. Like, even if the whole democratic process isn't allowed to be played out, like, look at what happened to the Soviet Union. Eventually it took a very long time, but eventually it collapsed under its own weight, right? Because it was so bureaucratic. It was so inefficient. And that's where the fiat world, that's where it wants to go. It wants this top-down, centralized control over everything. And then the Bitcoin world wants kind of like this bottom-up control over things. But the side effect of that is that it does take away, like this is the pill that that Bitcoiners have to swallow. Max Kaiser is very open about this. Like, Bitcoin ends the state. This is what people have to understand, is that Bitcoin fundamentally ends the state. Why? Because it provides an alternative to central banking. If you have an alternative to central banking, how else does the state fund itself? The state can only fund itself through income tax. There's only so much income tax you can collect from people, right? So that means that the natural order of things is that government will shrink. It won't grow, because for the last 100 or something years, all that government has done is it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'll ask you, right, as a millennial, as someone who's my age, has your life gotten better with government getting bigger? No. They promised us it would get better, right? They said everything's going to be fine. Things are going to be awesome. Life is going to be good. And then these mother effers are like saying, hey guys, you know what? You'll actually own nothing and you'll be happy. It's like, dude, it's like you guys have messed up. And then when people are like pissed off enough and it's like, okay, guys, we got to vote in someone different because like enough is enough. They're like, no, that's a danger to democracy. You're an alt-right extremist / racist. Like, no, dude. Like, you know, it's a system trying to protect itself. I understand, but enough is enough. Bitcoin fixes this, and it's going to be a bumpy road. Like, the separation of money and state ain't going to be easy, bro. It's going to be bumpy for sure.
100%. By the way, I'm still Gen Z, but
oh, Gen Z, even so, you got screwed over more than I did, right? Like Gen Z, like millennials got screwed, right? Because we're poorer than our parents. Gen Z got ultra screwed because they're even poorer than millennials and their parents, right? And in Gen Alpha, like, I don't even know what they're gonna do, right? But their own propaganda is trying to normalize this to you. Like, they're even telling you, they're like, hey guys, it's okay. Listen, you own nothing and be happy. Everything will be fine. You know, just 15-minute cities. You'll live in a block. You'll eat cube food. It will be fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be great. And what they're doing is they know that you're not going to have the prosperity as the previous generations. So they're trying to like psychologically, and tell you like, hey guys, you know, net zero. And like, they're trying to psychologically get you okay with you not living a more prosperous life than your parents. And the fundamental problem with that is that if you look at productivity, and if you look at technological innovation, it's all gone parabolic. The only thing that hasn't matched the productivity gains and the technological gains, and you could all see all of this stuff, by the way, on the website, What the F Happened in 1971. Compensation has stayed the same. So the amount of money that we've been getting paid has stayed the same since the 1970s. But productivity has increased by like a factor of 2 or 3, right? Technological increases. Like, look at what we're doing right now. This wasn't possible 10 years ago, bro, right? And you're telling me that somehow we're poorer than our parents? Like, no, there's something wrong, right? And just because we're aware of that doesn't make us racist, you know, or doesn't make us extremists, you know? So like, that is like the ultimate form of gaslighting. But us as Bitcoiners, instead of getting like distracted by the, what they love to do, which is like kind of the left and the right, like it's, you know, vote for this party and vote for this party and everything's. I'm not saying it's not important. It is important because you want a pro-Bitcoin candidate in office and power. But what I'm trying to say is like the real revolution, the real change is individuals taking Bitcoin into self-custody. And if enough of us do it, we will win by default. And there's nothing they could do, right? They won't be able to print anymore, right? That is the revolution. That's what's actually going to change the world. That's actually what's going to make the world free. That's actually what's going to make the world prosper. We have to end central banking. Central banking is a death cult, dude. It's a death cult. I said this the other day. The tweet blew up. It got like 1,000-something likes. It's not an exaggeration. Like, central banking fuels the war machine. Like, if you want to know why we've had 100 years of war, it's literally because we've had politicians with the ability to print money out of thin air, and they continue funding this war machine. And who pays the price? Young people. I was like doing research on this topic when the whole conflict in the Middle East started happening. Back in the Middle Ages in Europe, like during the 100 Years' War between England and France, the reason it was 100 years is because the wars would end. Like, they would have like a war for like 5 years and then the war would end. You know what? You want to know why the war would end? Because the king ran out of gold. So because he ran out of gold, he was like, all right, guys, I'm sorry, I can't pay you. And all the soldiers were like, all right, guys, time to go home. We'll, whatever. And then he got more gold, and then the war would continue. But could you imagine if the king was just able to just continue just create gold out of nowhere? He'd be able to continue paying his soldiers, right? Because I think fundamentally, like, if you can't pay for it, people aren't going to naturally fight, right? So there's two worlds, right? Which is fiat kind of incentivizes violence because it's profitable. Sound money disincentivizes violence because it's more expensive than just traditional commerce. Like if you're just trying to transact with someone and you're just trying to, make a deal or make a trade, traditional trading and commerce is more profitable, more lucrative than war. War becomes expensive. And under a fiat standard, war becomes profitable and it's less expensive than kind of traditional commerce. It like flips everything on its head is what I'm trying to say, right?
It's crazy when you think about the implications of that. Just because I think we, in the first episode actually with you, we talked about it because it was before the election, of the importance of the election. Now looking back, how happy are you with the Trump administration from shitcoining up till Bitcoin strategic reserve and all the things with the Cynthia Lummis bill and all the things that kind of prospered from that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So I think that I'm extremely happy from the kind of I'm extremely happy from the regulatory standpoint. I'm very disappointed from the war. I think from like the war aspect, it feels like a little bit of a betrayal in a way, right? And we were promised the end of wars. Like that's part of the reason that that's part of the reason that we voted for Trump. Like he said, we were going to end endless wars. And I think this last thing where he's just like, hey guys, we're going to take these stealth bombers, fly them halfway across the world and just bomb another country, like without asking Congress. Like that's literally what every other president, and this goes back to the money printer, by the way, this all connects. That to me was extremely disappointed. And we were promised something different, right? But as a Bitcoiner, from a regulatory perspective, he's been fantastic. Like end of Operation Choke Point 2.0, the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, holding a White House crypto summit, like he called it. You have Bo Hines, you have David Sachs, you have Howard Lupnick. So it was fantastic. It was incredible, like from a regulatory standpoint. But from where I feel very strongly about, like, dude, you lied. Like, you promised us no more war, and now we're going to war. Now, to be fair, it seems like he wants a ceasefire and it's over and it was just one bomb and that and this and this and that. And so maybe Trump is being very smart. And if that's the case, great, wonderful. Okay, a couple bombs. But I think so many people in the United States have such a bad memory of Iraq and Afghanistan, where like we invaded those countries for 20 years and we spent blood and treasure. Thousands of Americans died, tens of thousands got, horrific injuries that they'll never be able to recover from. And for what? Like, for what? There was no weapons of mass destructions in Iraq, right? So, like, I'm hearing the same thing. It's like Iran is developing weapons of mass destruction. We're like, oh my god, holy shit, we've heard this before, dude. Like, no. So, yeah. So from two angles, like, I'm very happy from the Bitcoin regulatory standpoint, but I'm very disappointed from the anti-war aspect that he promised everyone was going to be the case. You know,
You said in the beginning before we recorded that the world is crazy right now. Is that what you mean with the war, or is this something else?
yeah. I mean, I think this is the fourth turning. I don't know how much you believe in that theory, but like, you know, the theory from the fourth turning is basically that, you know, every 100 years or so, what happens is, like, you know, weak men create bad times create strong men create good times. And like, if you kind of just break it down, like, all the people that lived through World War II have died. Like, they've died off. And what happens is that you forget the lessons of the past. So history kind of starts repeating itself. And I think right now what we're living through as a society, okay, let me ask you something. Do you remember 2012?
Barely. I was like 14 years old.
Do you remember like 2015?
Yes. And the biggest thing I remember from there was that we had a huge immigration crisis in Austria and in Europe. But that's all I remember. And it was my first year of internship.
Okay. So those years, right? Like 2010, 2015, maybe you were too young for that. All this stuff that's happening right now didn't exist. Like, what people cared about was like what the TV show was going to be on TV, right? Or like what the game was. Like, life was normal, like somewhat normal. There was no immigration crisis. There was no thing. Like, stuff was like relatively stable, right? And then 2016 came around and shit just hit the fan, bro. Like, and you came of age during this, so this is all you know. But I remember the times before, and it wasn't like this, right? And, you know, whether it was Trump almost getting assassinated, the bullet missing, the war kind of in Ukraine and Russia, and all the money printing, the pandemic, right? You know, Trump and Elon like just battling it out on X. The previous American elections that have happened over the last decade, like, I've never seen that in my life, right? I've never seen that. That has not happened in American history. And in Europe too, like, the elections in some of these countries are crazy, dude. Like, it's nuts. Like, I'm sure you see it too. Some parties are just completely villainized. So that is the fourth turning. Like, that's what's happening right now. The world order is readjusting, and I just don't know where it's going to end up, right? Like, I don't know when the things settle, like, where is this going to stop, right? And I think that's really the big question, right? So yeah, I think, you know, as a whole, you know, the world is going through a fourth turning, and it's just a whole reshaping of society. I think weak men have created hard times, and I think that is creating strong men in the process. And those strong men are remembering the memories of the past to kind of imply that into society. And then you can make the argument, which is kind of a little bit deeper, but the spiritual and moral aspect, like the moral decay of society, right? So if you look at Europe, or if you look at Japan, the reason that they have such high mass immigration, specifically in Europe, is because the population is not making enough babies. Like, the native population is not making enough children for it to replace its population. So it's essentially having a population decline, which is horrific from an economic standpoint. Now, what politicians are trying to do to like paper over that is mass immigration. That's why all the immigrants are flooding in, because they know that essentially society collapses if you don't have more births than you have deaths, right? But what is the root cause of all of this? And I think that might be the answer. And I'm not the only one to say this. I think it was Breedlove that said this as well. But that might be the answer. I think the answer towards what is going to be the fundamental change at the end of this fourth turning, I think it's going to be two questions. Question number one is going to be, I think society as a whole is going to know the answer, try to find out the answer of what is money. And I think question number two is society as a whole is going to ask the question, what is government? What is the role of government in my life? And I think at the end of this fourth turning, because of technology, because of alternative media, because of alternative non-sovereign money, I think those two questions are going to be asked by society. And I think that's a lot of the chaos that's happening right now is because of those things, right? So, yeah, man, but it is very exciting times. You know, we just happen to grow up in a crazy era. Like, I heard the 1950s were like effing, like they were awesome and they were chill and everyone was just like, you know, having a good time, and you can afford a house with one job and have 18 kids. Like now it's like, oh, I have an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment, and have to work 4 jobs, and you know, but this is the price we pay. You know, in the fourth turning, it basically says that our generation is the hero generation. Like, we are the generation that's meant to fix all this mess that the boomer generation created, essentially.
It's so interesting. You might enjoy this. In the history of the Republic of Austria since 1945, there has only been one instant where the leading party that won the election didn't get the chancellor. This was 1999. And there, the first two parties were 400 votes. The difference was just 400 votes. So they basically finished the same place. And the second one with 400 votes less got the chancellor. So the kind of prime minister is kind of the president of Austria. And the second time it happened was last year, 2024. And this time, the difference was not 400 votes. It was 400,000 votes, which is a roughly almost 4%. It was of difference between the first and the second. Now, again, the second one got the chancellor, not because of weird correlation or anything like that, just because every other party said no to the party that won the overall election. This is, by the way, also the only party, so the most popular party currently in Austria is the only party that says, oh, what Trump and Elon is kind of doing in the beginning is really good. Outside of the war, this was kind of more on the policy when Trump came into office. So, and probably you can find more examples across Europe. This is just the one thing I know of where it never happened since 1945, and 2024 is kind of the first year. Yeah, they won the vote. Most people in Austria voted for them. System doesn't like it. So we will form a coalition of all other parties. So the biggest party is no longer really in power, which is a crazy thing to do, I think, personally. But that's how democracy, at least in Austria, works. And reminded me when you told about the fourth turning and things are changing, because 2016, I just turned 18 years old. So my life started in this world. This reminded me of that. So I thought like you might enjoy this small snippet.
So yeah, and I do. And it's really interesting because what you just described, that phenomenon is happening all over Europe, right? Because of the parliamentary systems where essentially these parties can create coalitions. Like in the US, it's winner takes all. It's a two-party system, right? But in Europe, essentially you have this coalition system. So like Le Pen's party in France got basically enough votes to, almost have a majority, but then the centrist basically aligned with part of the leftists to make sure that Le Pen's party wouldn't have the majority. And then in Spain, the same thing happened, right? Where these new parties were getting bigger and bigger majorities, but the parties in power would do more and more extreme things, like with like alliances and whatever, in order to maintain that majority over parliament, right? And you mentioned a very interesting year, which was 1945. And the reason that that's a very interesting year is because that's the full fourth turning cycle. The last fourth turning we had was 1933 to 1945. So like literally what you're describing was the end of that year. That was the last fourth turning. It was 1945, right? So now we essentially have forgotten all of those lessons of the past. And now as a society, a collective society, we're relearning those lessons, right? And that's where you're seeing all this tumultuousness. But what I will say though is like once we get over this hump, I think society, I think human civilization we're gonna see a level of prosperity and peace and freedom the likes of which has never been seen before in human history. And I'm extremely excited about this. Like I think this is going to happen in the 2030s, and the 2040s is going to be even more, and the 2050s is going to be even more. I think we're going through very dark times. Like the 2020s are going to be remembered as very dark. The end of the 2010s and the 2020s, like the stuff that has happened has been insane, right? I think it's going to get significantly better after we get over this hump. And of course, Bitcoin obviously plays a key role in all of this.
I want to get to one last topic before we get to the end routine. And I mentioned your tweet, I think 1 month or 2 months ago on the podcast, because I saw it randomly before the show started. I think the tweet went like, it's the best cycle for news and the worst cycle for price, something like that. I don't know if I've seen it on your personal account or on the Simply Bitcoin account. Not sure about that. But it's interesting how this cycle I mean, I remember Samson Mao saying like, oh, once we have the ETFs, we'll go into 1 million. And then people say, oh, once we got the strategic Bitcoin reserve, we'll going up, and things like that. How was it for you? And you have been in multiple cycles. For me, it's now the first full cycle. Now I'm coming into my second one. How has it been for the difference of the last cycles? Now we have so many companies, institutional adoption in there, and it seems like there's trillions and billions flowing into the Bitcoin, and the price is kind of not reflecting that. Are you worried about rehypothecation? Are you kind of just seeing people are selling at the 100K mark because it's like a 100K mark and they're feeling like that's the top? What is your feeling around the price action in this cycle, and what are you kind of expecting?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. So, yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, bro, this cycle has sucked. Like it's been terrible. Like I don't like, you have like Checkmatey, and I respect him a lot, and I respect his work, and you have a lot of people saying, oh my God, it's been fantastic. It's like, no, it hasn't. Like compared to like previous cycles, like it hasn't been fantastic. Like we were at $100,000 in the beginning of the year. It's been 6 effing months. The year. Okay. So the most explosive years in Bitcoin are the year after the halving. It's the year after the halving, right? We were at 100K in the beginning of the year, $109,000. So meaning we're lower right now than we were in the beginning of the year, right? Then we fell to 76,000. Okay. And now we're back at 105,000, and Bitcoin has essentially become a stable coin, right? And this is what I was telling you in the beginning of the show. Like, Bitcoin might just be growing up, man. Like, it might be just becoming this such a large asset that it's just becoming harder to move. Now, I'm saying that simultaneously, things have been different ever since the ETFs have been approved. Since the ETFs have been approved, like the BlackRock ETFs, the price has been acting weird, dude. Like, very strange. And I would have very long conversations with Larry Lepard and Caitlin Long. They're much smarter than I am, and they know what they're talking about. And they kept saying it. Rehypothecation, 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 rehypothecation risk, rehypothecation risk. And if you take a look at the gold market, like, the price of gold should be significantly higher, but it is being suppressed. And the reason it's being suppressed is because, like, paper gold. So if you have all this Bitcoin that is custodied with Coinbase, and it's not in self-custody, or it's not in a public address that you can verify, right? Like, Michael Saylor was asked a question at the Bitcoin conference, and he said, I think it was Mitchell Hoddle. He said, like, will you ever make your reserves public? And he said, no. And I was just like thinking, I was like, what do you mean that? What do you mean no? Like, El Salvador has their reserves public. Tether, Paolo posted Tether's reserves, like, on Twitter, copy paste. Here's the mempool address, 92,000 Bitcoin. Like, here's the Tether address. Like, it is what it is. That doesn't seem to be a problem. And, you know, he's saying, like, no, we can't post that because of, like, security and privacy and all this stuff. And as a Bitcoiner, I'm just saying, like, that is really weird, man. So, yeah, the price has been weird. This has been a terrible cycle from a price action perspective. And there might be some rehypothecation that's happening. And a part of Bitcoin can be captured. Like, that's the reality. Now, does that mean that it's over, it's done, and, you know, we're not going to have volatility to the upside? No, I think we're absolutely going to have volatility to the upside. But there's absolutely paper Bitcoin. 100%, man. 100%. And this cycle, I don't care what anybody says. I've been here since 2016. This cycle has sucked, man. It's not been a great cycle. And I've talked to OGs about this, like Jameson Lopp, and I've talked to other people, like, you know, American Hodl even says it. Like, no one has any idea what's happening right now. So we should be at 150K. We should be at 200K by now. Like, we should be at those prices. I don't know why we're not at those prices. It's very weird. And we're heading into the end of the year, which historically has been when Bitcoin has always gone crazy, right? It's always exploded. And maybe it does. Maybe this is 2017 all over again, and we're heading into the end of the year, and Bitcoin ends up at $300,000-$400,000, and you're like, oh, you know what? This whole year has been worth it. You know, this has been amazing. But from where I'm standing, dude, like, it's just been extremely boring. And, like, you know, Bitcoin's like a stable coin, dude. Like, it's literally just going sideways. And, you know, I've never experienced that in my time in Bitcoin. It's always been significantly more volatile. And this sideways action, I mean, like, I'm just looking at this in the chart. Since we've been at these price levels since November of 2024, and it is July of 2025. And as content creators like me and you, you know, like, we get more views when the price goes up. The price has not gone up since November, bro. In fact, it's gone down. And then it's kind of gone sideways, but it's just been boring. It's just been extremely boring, dude. It's like what 6 or 7 months of just blah, like that sucks. Hopefully things get exciting again. I don't know. That's my take.
In 2017, I just looked at the chart because I was curious while you were talking. We had most of the action at the second half of the year, but we had really good action also in the first half. I think it was 150% in the first half. And in the second half, it was 340%. So yeah, let's see. Let's see if we can basically get that 0% gain that we have now in the first half, maybe make it up with like a 200-300% gain. I at that point, I don't believe in it. And I'm very cautious of saying anything about the price. And, I was a Bitcoin Prague, and there's like those influencers running around on the floor making that kind of street interview style videos. I've been interviewed by 5 people, and 4 of them asked me the first question. It was really fun. What is the price at the end of the year? And I always said like, if it runs good, 200K. If it runs bad, whatever, basically. And I'm not that bullish anymore on this year. I mean, long term, no rehypothecation, nothing will stop Bitcoin. As Elon says, nothing stops the strain. But yeah, maybe this year's breaking the cycle down, and maybe 2026 is the big up year for Bitcoin. Like, I have no clue, maybe. And it's just interesting to think about that and see it. But yeah, it's the Bitcoin price action is important for content creators. So Bitcoin support us.
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's basically, it's kind of our lifeblood a little bit, and
how's it actually? I'm curious. Is it only on the upside, or is it also on the downside, on the volatility? You have way more insights than me, and I also don't track it really, and I'm just around for like a year now. But have you seen that no matter what Bitcoin price is doing, that the views are going up? Is it kind of the stable thing that kind of killing the things?
Yeah. So I mean, like a couple. Basically you get parabolic growth with price going up. Price going sideways is bad, and then price going down is somewhat bad, but there's volatility, so it gets people a little bit more excited, but it's still bad. Really what gets people extremely excited is when the price goes up, and then they have more interest in Bitcoin from a content creation. Now, simply, we've kind of figured out a formula where we get views no matter what. So we get a very consistent viewership base regardless of price action. But it makes it a lot easier, bro, when the price is going up. Like, you're going to get 2 or 3 times as many views as you're getting right now, easily. So yeah, it's just a very, very effing boring right now, dude. Like, I don't know what to say, but look, boring is good sometimes, because boring basically means that, eventually this thing breaks to the upside. Like, I'm just looking at the chart right now. Dude, I mean, we've been going side. There was a point last year between March and November that we went sideways. And right now we've been between November and June of this year that we've been going sideways. So, like, I think we might have another run up. And I think that run, it will be if we have a run up, like, it will be pretty significant, man. Like, I'm thinking, 100%, 60, 50% run up. Like, it's going to be a nice run up. Or it can get parabolic, it can get crazy. Things have been muted, dude. Like, that's what I'm trying to tell you, is that, like, look, from the bottom of 2023 to now, it's been pretty good. It's been a 500% return, which is fantastic. But that's over a 2-year time scale. And then I think what gets really people depressed is if, like, you just bought MicroStrategy instead of Bitcoin, like you would have gotten all the upside of Bitcoin, but significantly more. So like instead of like a 5x, you would have gotten like a 25x, right? Which is like life-changing, right? So yeah, man, I mean, I think all that is a little bit, it's just a bigger asset class, man. But you know, maybe if you just kind of zoom out and take a lower time preference, you know, things look a little bit better.
And I always almost overlooked a time. We have been very progressive with time, but we have a quick end routine. As you know, the first question of the end routine, 2 questions. The first question is, what have you learned since you have last been on the podcast outside of Bitcoin?
Outside of Bitcoin, yeah, I mean, Simply Bitcoin's we're a media company, dude. So I'm learning how to be a CEO, and that's been a crazy ride. Very exciting. And yeah, initially I started like you, like as a, you know, just one man show doing all my editing and all that stuff. And now we're like a pretty big team, and I have to make payroll every month. And yeah, so just have to think about not only making content and getting views, but I also have to think about revenue and strategy and growth. And, you know, a lot of people depend on me, and that has been it's been a great learning experience.
Awesome. Yeah. That's a lot. Maybe we can dive into at some point closer in that in an episode. I think it would be fun to talk about that. As you know, we have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you the question, what are you currently most concerned about in Bitcoin?
What am I currently the most concerned about? I would say rehypothecation. I would say paper Bitcoin. I would say paper gains, paper games in Bitcoin. And I would say, you know, it concerns me that people have forgotten the ethos, which is self-custody, not your keys, not your cheese. And it's kind of became this Wall Street number go up type of conversation, you know, which that concerns me tremendously.
100%. I think there's also something that mirrors a lot with the community where like, why is the focus so much on institutional number go up technology, have your Bitcoin on ETFs and exchanges, which is kind of losing the freedom aspect of Bitcoin. But yeah, maybe that's growing pains from Bitcoin maturing, as we talked about before. Thank you so much, Nico, for being such a great guest today. Really enjoyed our conversation. Before I let you go, where can people find you, ask a question, and reach out to you?
Yeah, you could find me at BitVolt on X, or you can, if you want to check out our content at Simply Bitcoin, you could just search Simply Bitcoin anywhere and we'll pop up. And Robin, big fan of your work, and you're incredibly hard worker, man. And, you know, you're one of the up and coming Bitcoin podcasts. And I think the community sees that, and excited to see where you'll be, you know, a couple years from now.
Thank you so much, Nico. It means a lot to me. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye.